Hello, everyone. For everyone who is here, this is time for the A Game of Thrones live show. And the story behind this is that I finally decided to reread it. I have read it, but I haven't read it for a long time. I read it at 14 and 17, so it's been a few years, and I had no idea how much more I would like it. I mentioned this in like my top 5 series that it was really hard to place because I was like, I really didn't remember how much like what I liked about it and what I didn't like it. I just vaguely was like, yeah, these are good for these reasons, and I've heard so many people talk about it. And I like to leave people in suspense. So we have Kyle here, who's going to be the guest, the resident huge fan of A Song of Ice and Fire. And we are going to talk about A Game of Thrones. And Kev's here for all my bad takes. Good evening, Rogue. I have some good takes in here as well, one or two. We'll find out. So Kyle, do you want to introduce yourself to the people and convince them that you're not a fake fan?
Hey everybody, I'm Kyle from the YouTube channel Read by Kyle. Sometimes I post videos, more often I just go live, so that's what I do. But I like fantasy, sci-fi, horror, historical fiction, all that jazz. A Song of Ice and Fire is my favorite series. I just did a full series reread, including Fire and Blood and like Mystery Night stuff. And yeah, I am excited that Jake is going to hopefully have better opinions this time because teenage Jake wasn't quite on the money on this series. And I agree with Kev that you put Evan Winter above George
You know
R.
what?
Martin.
That's valid. But you know what? I don't even care. I really like those books.
I'm gonna read Rage of Dragons in December. By the way, not related to this, but
okay. And you can like it way less than A Song of Ice and Fire, and that'll be okay.
Yeah.
So do you? How much? For I was not like I've already really liked A Song of Ice and Fire. Do you have a? I've got my wild decimal scoring system. What score are you expecting out of 10? What score does it have to be for you to be like, okay, he's redeemed himself fully? And what score would it have to be where you're just like, I'm a huge disappointment?
Well, what was your original score, or like, did you not score this?
So originally,
on your certain.
Originally when I read it, like when I first started putting in scores with decimals, I think I gave it like an 8.5 or something, and then later I bumped it up to a 9 because I was like, and every time I've got my like Google Doc of books, and every time putting stuff like above A Game of Thrones felt weird, but I'm like, I definitely like it than the other books around there. So kind of 8.5, kind of 9, depending on.
Okay, so I think it would depend on what your reasoning for like your rating is. Like if you gave it like, for instance, a 9, and your reasoning for doing so is that you remember how much better the next two are, and you're like, well, I want to have some space to go.
I don't believe in space to go.
Okay, I know. Okay, me either. So in that case, then I would probably be upset with you. But I would say
you'd be upset with a 9. This guy's. See, he's not a fake fan. I didn't get a fake fan on here.
Okay, so let me see. Wait. I have to. Because your rating system is so wildly different than mine. What is a 9.5 for you? Like, list some 9.5.
A 9.5 is among my favorite books of all time.
Yes.
Examples of books I gave a 9.5 would be Demon in White, The Lines of Our Song, and Toll the Hounds.
And name a Song of Ice and Fire book that you gave a 9.
A Song of Ice and Fire book that I gave exactly a 9. Let me actually just like 1 second.
Because on my rating scale they're all 10s. So like obviously anything less than a 10 is not good. But
yeah, but obviously like your 10s are different than my 10s.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay, so an example of like a 9 would be like Shadows Linger, Dune. You haven't read half of these. No, that was a 9. Last Argument of Kings was a 9.1. Warbreaker I have at 9. Don't actually have any that are exactly 9s. Like Jade Wolf, like a 9.1. So like, books that I like really like.
Okay, so this is getting granular, but I would say a 9 would be slightly disappointing, but a 9.2 and above would be acceptable.
Okay, that's acceptable. Yeah. And then what score do I have to give it to fully redeem myself?
I mean, if you just threw out your whole rating system and gave it a 10, but no, I would say a 9.3. I think that would be fair because 9.5s are like the books you like love, and I don't think somebody has to fully redeem themselves to or I don't think people have to fully like it's one of their favorite books
I
of all
stand by it.
time for it to be a redeemable thing. Feast of Crows is a 10.
And also, for the record, this is the guy who, like, he'll give a book that he's like, this is better than other books at 10, but it has, like, something that's a flaw, so it's a 9.5. He'll do that for other series, but for a
For
Song
sure.
of Ice and Fire, for, like, A Dance with Dragons, where
Yes, absolutely.
clear flaws, he's like 10.
I could actually do an essay on all the things that annoy me about A Dance with Dragons, but I'm like, but it's a 10.
Yeah.
Logic
So, see,
flies out
guys,
the window.
I got a real fan. I wasn't going to let you down. So, we are going to switch to this mode because we have my reactions. And, of course, my first reaction is Royce is wearing ring mail. No wonder he gets fucking wrecked.
You and your ring mail.
So we're going to get the ring mail thing out of the way because this comes up more than a few times in my comments of this book. Ring mail, usually my problem with armor in fantasy books is I get annoyed that it does nothing. My problem with ring mail is actually that ring mail isn't fucking armor. Ring mail didn't exist in the Middle Ages. It's literally like just rings that are sewn to the clothing, so it looks like chainmail. So if you want to be a fancy pants who looks like he's wearing chainmail and you're going to somewhere in like the 19 or 1800s, but you don't want to buy chainmail because you're not going to get stabbed, then you wear ring mail. So why are people like some of the King's Watch and Fire and Blood have ring mail? Why are you supplying them with that, Damon? You idiot. I thought you were smart. And Waymere Royce is wearing ring mail, which is why my second comment is the pale sword bit through the ring mail beneath his arm. Well, the point of this scene is supposed to be, look how cool the White Walker swords are. They can go through armor. But this was not effective for me because I'm like, well, it went through ring mail. That's just clothing. Like, no shit, the sword went through
That's
it.
just
like,
clothing.
Yeah, like that's just shiny clothing. Anyway.
It's funny because I don't have this hang up that you have, but like your explanation for it is like like I have this nerd rage for other things. So like while this doesn't bother me, I totally am like, yeah, man, I get you. I'm on your
we're
side.
going down the ring mail rabbit hole later in the reaction to this book. We at some point I was like, maybe the ring mail's foreshadowing. But then it got ruined. Unless two people die in the next book, in which case so I mentioned this is full Song of Ice and Fire spoilers. A bunch of people wear ring mail in this book, and all of them except two are dead by A Dance with Dragons. So I was like, maybe wearing ring mail is actually a death sentence, and George knows it's stupid.
Can you tell us who the two are now, or is
yeah, I'll tell you who it is now. Brom wears ring mail in his duel in the Vale, which is
Did you just call him Brom?
I don't care what he's called. I read
he's not an author from the 1930s. He's Bron with an N.
Is it not with an M?
Oh, no, it's with an N. Brom is an author. He's not from the 1930s, but
whatever. He wears ring mail in his duel, in his trial by combat representing Tyrion, and Maya Stone is also wearing ring mail.
Maybe the Vale just is the place where all of the like.
Then a bunch of the Night's Watch people wear ring mail, but it's a bunch of people who are dead. The people who are alive, like Jon and Sam, are only described as wearing mail. So, and a bunch of people, Robb Stark wears ring mail.
Interesting. You might be into a new theory that I haven't heard here.
So if Maya Stone and Bronn both die in Winds of Winter, then I will be saying that wearing ring mail in a Game of Thrones is a death sentence, and it's foreshadowing, and it's 200 IQ. This is absolutely on brand for me. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, and also I wrote that like the characterization for Royce is really impressive. It's a 9-page prologue, and it's from someone else's point of view, and the other person's point of view, like they dislike him. One sec, you can't see this very well on this. I'm just gonna do something really quick. Oh no, I don't want to. We're gonna go like, there we go. Hey, there we go. And it's just really because the person you're in the point of view of doesn't even like Royce. Like he doesn't respect Royce. He's like, oh, look at this like dipshit lordling. Who doesn't trust that the Night Walker's here. So I also wanted to say, like, he actually is pretty cool and really well done, where you're kind of like, this guy should really trust the Night Walker. You kind of don't like him, and then he has the line where, like, he's like, let's dance with the White Walker, and it was very cool. So,
yeah, I think it's such an excellent prologue for, like, that reason. Way more on first read, especially, you're just like, hey, he's just some random noble that's an asshole. And then you're just like, but actually, though, he's pretty multifaceted for the fact that he's only in one scene.
Yeah, it's really well done, and I think it's one of the things I was generally very impressed of. Which it's a thing people know George is good at. What was Kyle's wrong opinion? Oh, is it Feast for Crows getting a 10? Whatever. It is very like efficient characterization. Like some people are like getting you to have an idea of who they are very, very, very quickly. I have more examples of that coming down, but that was something I was continually impressive. And I have notes like this is again going to come up a lot. I kept getting surprised by how like young people were, except Theon, who I thought was like near the same age as Rob.
Yeah, he's older.
Yeah, he's like 5 years older.
Yeah,
I don't know if is he around the same age in the show, maybe, or is it just not specified?
I feel like it is slightly specified, but it's not given a lot of. I think they code him as slightly older, but they don't explicitly say like he's this many years older. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, because I think in the book it actually makes it give more sense. Because there's this weird thing where like Theon keeps giving advice to Rob, and I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
Why is Rob listening to this person? But it kind of makes sense, like if he's the 19-year-old and Rob's the 14-year-old.
Yeah, like I think he has to be aged up because like the reason they aged everybody up is because of Daenerys. They needed her to be older so they could do the sex scenes because you can't even depict. So if they made her 18, the rebellion had to have taken place longer ago, which aged up Rob and Jon and all of them, which then aged up some of the kids. So then I feel like the rebellion and Pike would have been also pushed up. So then Theon had to be like 10 years old because he had to be able to remember his childhood. So probably he was aged up. So he's probably like in his early 20s.
Okay.
First season.
And then I also have kind of funny, like the first impression of Bran, like the first thing he thinks is that he's excited about the beheading. And it was kind of a funny, deliberate, like giving you the wrong impression. Because then right after it's like, no, because I'm excited because it means Ned thinks I'm old enough.
Right.
But that was just a random thing. Okay. And I also, Jon's my favorite character in this book.
Wild, but okay.
Yeah, and I remember as a kid he was my favorite character, and then over time I'm like, nah, kid me was probably stupid. But I will have much examples down here. He's not my favorite character in the series. He's not my favorite character in probably any of the other books. Maybe one more. Probably.
Listen, I love this series so much that the only way people like he's not my favorite, but like I don't think there's a wrong favorite unless you were just like Aaron Dampere is just the best. I would just be like, dude, you're reading these books wrong. But like
Quentin Martell is my favorite, Kyle.
I defend Quentin Martell, but not to that level. But yeah.
But in this book specifically, Jon is my favorite. He was my favorite as a kid, and he's still my favorite. And I like him right away. My least favorite point of view in this book? I don't know. Like, I don't know. It's hard to pick.
I actually don't know that either. I guess I would have to say Bran, but it's not like in book 2, I like Bran's chapters clearly the least, and this is just his is the least good. But I like all the chapters, or all the POVs in this book.
Probably in this book, almost I think just because one of the strengths of this novel is that the various chapters like progress the plot of everyone else.
Yeah.
But Daenerys stuff has some really good stuff, but almost Daenerys just because like it's this own like completely separate thing.
Yeah, that's fair.
But whatever. I'm not gonna pick. Anyway, I like him right away and his answer to like the dire wolves. And I love how he omits himself as a child of Ned Stark, like to let the other kids have the wolf. Jon's great, but who has a better story than him, Kev? I mean, they're really cool.
I have the screen like full so I could read the notes. So yeah. I don't see people's comments right now unless you pop them up. And so it was just funny that Kev was just out there hating on Bran while I was saying that Bran was the worst.
Hello, Derry. What's up?
Hey, Derry.
And also, I got to Catelyn 1, and man, that drops a lot of names. Like Catelyn and dialogues, just like and this person, this person, this person. I'm like, man, I'm feeling some sympathy for like 14-year-old me here. 14-year-old me was probably not just learn to like ignore it and you'll figure it out later. 14-year-old me was like, I don't know who any of these people are. I'm so confused. He's doing his best. And then here's a great example of characterization efficient characterization. Viserys is literally annoying with his first line of dialogue, and it's not even like he's insulting everyone. He's just like, "This is beauty. Touch it. Go on, caress
the fabric." Like, yeah, that's just really irritating.
He's not even saying anything like mean or anything, and like literally with one line of dialogue, I'm like, I want to punch this stupid kid. Like, shut up. Um, so that's there's George being efficient with his character. Who says that? It's like
Caress the fabric. Yeah, I've never really like latched onto that, but yeah, it is a really funny thing to say. Very Viserys.
Yeah. And also just in hindsight now, like the way Ned thinks of like Lyanna's reaction to his promise, it's just like incredibly obvious that it's like a mother who's worried about the safety of their child. R plus L equals J is a thing, people. I hadn't read these in a long time, and I'd seen some of the contrarian theories, and one of my takeaways of this book is every theory that says R plus L equals J is wrong. Like, they're all stupid. R plus L equals J is like, it was already pretty obvious at 17. It's unbelievably obvious.
Yeah, like, I mean, Zin is in the comments, and I know he's going to just be foaming at the mouth trying to say that it's a dumb theory, but sorry, Zin, we just don't believe you.
No, it's so, like...
Yeah.
The other theories are just all wrong. It's so obvious.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's obvious, but it's not like when he was writing the series, he didn't know it was going to become this big, crazy, epic, insane theory where like people could like talk to other fans across the world and like harp on every single line of like purple flowers or blue flowers and whatever, right? So like it's obvious, but it's obvious when you're looking for it. There's a lot of people who read the first book and they have no idea. And I feel like in a different world where this was like a C-list series that people just read and they just went through the books and read them, when they got to that reveal, I think a decent amount of people would be surprised. Like, I don't think it's as obvious as the mega fans think that it is. I think we're just all so inundated with the evidence all the time that we're like, yeah, of course it's obvious. But I don't think a lot of people pick up on it.
I will say, I think there are some comparatively like obvious things for other series, but they're complete series. So I get to see people's reaction first go. And there's usually a couple things that like most people tend to predict. And I think that probably would be the version of A Song of Ice and Fire in the alternate reality where it was a less popular complete series.
I see what you mean. I've seen a lot of people read the books that weren't spoiled and watched for their reaction, and some people figure it out. Like, I'm not saying that nobody can figure it out, but
and
there's a lot of people that don't.
Me missed it. Like 14-year-old me.
Yeah, I didn't get. I only learned it. I wish I hadn't spoiled myself because I would have wondered what reread I would have figured it out. But I read the books once, and then I was like on the forums, and then I just learned. I feel like the second time I would have.
I'm gonna say like, and obviously I already knew it going on here, but like I would have figured it out this time.
I think you would have. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Jon is like Daron is his role model. He wants to be like Daron. I'm like, dude, Daron was B tier. Move on. I get he was kind of a badass.
He was young.
Like, he was young.
Listen, the youths, they care about Lil Pump. They care about young Jeezy, who's now just Jeezy, and they don't care about him anymore. He's no longer young Jeezy. Young Darian.
Anyway, and also Bran just straight up spoils season 2 of House of the Dragon in Bran 2. So
he does, yeah.
For people who have not read Fire and Blood, who have watched House of the Dragon, just I don't know. Go read Fire and Blood before you reread.
Your notes are just very funny, like because like I know you're putting them in there like as you think of them to read them, but just like I just imagine if you were just like this is your actual notes for yourself, and you were just like, look at this dude spoiling season 2 of House of the Dragon.
And also, what do you think of Boy? I can't wait for Bran's love of climbing to be a consistent part of his character.
That's good too.
So here I have first actual analysis, which is that the way the start of this novel is paced pretty much differently from like almost every other epic fantasy in terms of like how it introduces so many POVs, but all of them except Daenerys's all advance the plot of all the other POVs. I think by far the more common way to go is have like one point of view would be like just having like all Ned or all Bran or all Jon through this entire first section, or have like separate point of views in like all different locations, like Forge of Darkness, for example. And I really, really like the way that like it's introducing all those point of views, but it's not like you have to wait for another Ned chapter if you want more Ned Stark stuff and he's the dude you like. Like every single point of view advances the plot of at least multiple other point of views to start the book.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of people wish that he went back to that a little, because it's largely responsible for the bloat and feasts and dance, which like I mean I love those books, but some of that stuff like we don't need every single town that Brienne drops in on. You could just recap us a little.
Yeah, compared to like this, it actually does like it moves through it very quickly.
Yeah.
Where you'll get something
Every
you're
time I
expecting
reread it, I'm surprised.
like for example, Jon ending up in the Night's Watch. Like Jon in his first chapter or in his second chapter, maybe his first first point of view, he talked to Benjen. He's like, I'm going to join the Night's Watch. And then the next Catelyn chapter, it's like, oh, it would be a solution if Jon joins the Night's Watch. And then the next Tyrion chapter, you're like, yeah, I hear Jon's going to join the Night's Watch, and it advances that entire plot like in one Jon chapter. So yeah, remember that, George. But I think it works specifically well for introducing all the characters.
I do.
A lot of the time when you have like, how many POVs are in this book? Do you know off the top of your head? 8?
8.
Oh, good guess, me. And they introduced them all like
not counting the prologue, obviously.
Yeah, and they were introduced like back to back. Like I think the first, not all 8 of the first chapters. I think you go through the full run before you get a Sansa chapter, maybe. And maybe there's less Tyrion chapters, but you get like every point of view once before you get like a return point of view. And it would be like, if it was all separate, it would be pretty tiring because it's like, what if I want to get back to that guy?
Yeah. Rogue has a question that I want to address while we're talking about this pacing, which is, do you think Winds could be a return to the pacing of the first 3 books? No and yes, because we have sample chapters, and those sample chapters are still slow as molasses. Like there's one Ariane sample chapter where she's just like, wow, my servant and my stepsister, they kind of like each other. And that's like the whole chapter. And I'm just like, dude, we could move past this. But that being said, I do think that like the way the story is naturally going, it was like a rising arc for the first 3, and then it was declining action, and now it's been building up. So I do think Winds of Winter will have crazy pacing. I just think it'll also have a lot of setup chapters, and then it'll just go wild.
So do you think Winds could is the key word? I think it could. Do I think it will?
I don't think it could. Like he already released chapters where he's just pussyfooting around. Like,
well, he could have at some point, like during COVID, he could be like, you know what? He could have gone back and like reread stuff to be like, I want to see what's going on with this, and then like, you know, I like the way I did this. I'm gonna go back to doing this.
Sure, you're right. I guess could. I don't think it's likely.
I don't think it's likely though. All right. Yeah, and then I have an example. So in Tyrion 1, we learn that Bran might live. Robert will still likely command Ned to go to King's Landing, despite Bran being hurt. The wolves will likely go south with Arya and Sansa. And it's like, it's Tyrion's chapter, and he doesn't interact with all these people, but it advances all those plot lines. And like my next 2 things are just comments of that. Yeah, and then the same thing I talked about here, where it's like the Jon's progression for joining the plot. So I just really like how that was done. And then we get Jon 2, which is when Catelyn is really mean to him. Catelyn, sorry. I pronounce things wrong. It's my thing.
It's not as bad as Brom, but anyway.
Whatever. That Catelyn is really mean to Jon. And I mean, like, I've seen some people be like, see, this is how mean Catelyn usually is. And I'm like, I mean, she's clearly, like, particularly stressed and sleep deprived here. I don't think this is, like, a typical level of callousness. But still, it was pretty brutal.
Yeah, so I hate that scene. Like, I mean, not like hate it, like as I just mean like it makes me annoyed at Catelyn, and it's one of the large reasons why I don't like her that much. But I've defended it in the same way as you, because I don't think that's normal. Like, obviously, she thinks her kid is gonna die, and
she also like hasn't slept in like 2 days.
Yeah, there's other times where she like where Jon thinks back to her, and it's very clear that she did not like treat him as a motherly, or she was not a motherly figure to him. But most of the time he's just like, oh, he got ignored, which is not good. But like, it's not usually that cruel, I don't think.
Yeah. Hello, Fantasy Awash. I think it would be fair to say that Catelyn, whatever.
I don't care. I just wanted to correct you once so you knew it, but then you can say whatever you want.
I already forgot what the correction was. But anyway, I think it's clear she was very like cold with Jon, but here she's like overtly like cruel, like mean-spirited. Which I think is probably not super typical. That being said, we're going to get to this later. She annoyed me in this book way more than I remembered. I was so sick of her being like, I'm a Tully. I won't be scared off like this. Maybe I'm like, shut up. Like, no one cares, okay? Like, oh, we get it. You're a Tully, so you're not scared of heights. But also, you're not too proud, so you'll take the elevator. Like, shut up. Okay, no one cares. Yeah. Okay, so then we get Danny too. I still don't like this scene. I like it's probably it's my least favorite scene in this book.
Yeah.
Like it's just really
I mean, it's
weird.
not my least favorite scene. I can tell you my least favorite scene is related to this. Is when she tries to give Drogo a blowjob to bring him back to life. That's my least favorite
Okay,
scene.
that's also a fair pick. Um, but like, so people say about like the show that it makes this more brutal, and it's more like overtly just a rape scene. That's almost less weird than the weird like no 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 yes bullshit that's going on with a 13-year-old and a grown man. It's just weird. I don't like it. We're gonna
Yeah,
move
I mean,
on.
yeah,
But the
I don't
scene where
like
she
it
gets the horse
either.
is great.
Yeah, I mean, her silver is great, and that's like one of those things. It's like her connection to the Dothraki that she has in the books, and then like it's just so destroyed in the show. Like, and I feel like the through line of her silver and how that relates to her relationship with Drogo is really well done in the books. It's like a subtle touch, and I really like it.
Yeah, like with the horse, that is a good part. And then
Yeah.
there's just a continuity error, so I'm like 0 out of 10 book. Tyrion says the oldest dragon is way too old, and that Meraxi's skull is bigger than Vhagar's skull.
Wow, Tyrion sucks.
So either Tyrion is wrong or
I would
George
just
is wrong.
so that's actually funny. Clearly, he just changed his mind over time, but like in world, I could see that being Tyrion just doesn't know. But Tyrion's supposed to be the guy that knows all the dragon stuff, so that is interesting.
Yeah, probably Tyrion's the guy who's like reads a ton about dragons.
Yeah.
So whatever. 0 to 10 book based on that. And also I'm just like I really like Tyrion's dynamic with Jon, and I'm kind of sad we don't get more of them together.
I agree.
Obviously, it's possible in Winds they might interact more. I mean, they do end up interacting more in the show, but by then
They
it's like
won't.
they're not written by George, so it's
We
like
are
they're terrible.
never getting another Jon Tyrion scene, as sad as it makes me.
Yeah, but it makes me sad. Yeah. But I like this. So obviously we know Tyrion didn't hire the Catspaw because it's a later thing in this book. But like as a random hint, they have as the distraction, they burn the library to get the guards out. And I'm like, Tyrion is not burning the
Oh,
library.
that's good. That's good. I've never thought that one time in all my reads. That's an excellent observation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good job.
And I like the amount of dialogue that comes back to let you figure out that Tyrion didn't hire the Catspaw is like really impressive. Like,
So one thing that I caught on this reread,
oh yeah, the
and
backflip scene.
yeah, that I had never caught before is that so they like Catelyn goes and sees Littlefinger, and then Littlefinger says, "Oh, like I won this dagger from Tyrion, or I lost this dagger to Tyrion." That's what it was. And then, so then it's like, oh well, then Tyrion had the dagger. But then, like 5 or 10 chapters later, whatever, there's like a random council scene where Renly is saying how he lost money to Tyrion because Tyrion bet on Jaime. So he says right in the scene that actually Tyrion did bet for Jaime, and so Renly lost money. But Littlefinger says that he bet for Jaime and Tyrion bet against him, and that's how he lost the knife. So it's discrepancies right on the page.
Wait, I remember that scene, but I thought Renly said he also lost money with
No,
Tyrion because he bet on the Kingslayer.
No, I double checked. I
Okay.
went back and I was like, man.
And then there's the other one. There is
chess.
another Renly scene where he bet on Loras against Jaime in the Tourney of the Hand against Littlefinger, and he won a bunch of money. And he's like, if Tyrion was here, I would have won even more.
Yeah.
So they set up another spot where they're just like, Tyrion always bets on Jaime, and he's just not burning libraries. Like this was
Yeah.
right after the scene where he talks about how important books are and how he loaned books from the library. Like
I know, I can't believe I've never caught that. That's so good. That's
totally,
some really good hinting, George.
Good work, George. And also, Cersei being like, Joffrey will have those scars forever, and Robert just being like, fuck around and find out. So this is my, I forgot how much of an ass Robert was. Like,
yeah.
He's way more annoying in the book than he is in the show. In the show, like, I forget the actor's name, sorry. Playing him makes him like so iconic. Yeah, Mark Gaddy is like so iconic.
Yeah.
He's way more annoying in the book.
Yeah, he's a dick, and it's just weird the like cultiness that's come around him, like Bobby B and stuff. Like I know Jimmy really upplays it and stuff, but like I don't know, he's just kind of a shit king, kind of a shit guy. Like
Yeah, like I once was asked on my stupid Monarch tier list video that gets way too many views. Stop watching it, people. Like, where would you put Bobby B? And I was kind of like, probably in the same spot as like Viserys. They both didn't really do that much, and like there was a bunch of shit that happened after they died, but like it didn't happen when they were alive. No, Viserys is a better king than Robert was.
Is
Yeah,
that colored by your perception of Patty?
No, that's even going off Fire and Blood Viserys, who I think people were too hard on.
Yeah.
Even if he was like an idiot. I think he just kind of sat around and did nothing. Robert did more, was like to actively push towards the realm going to shit.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then we have really an incredible chapter, which was Bran's dream sequence. And I don't have a note before this about the prose, because like I know some people like George is like one of their favorite prose writers. And I'm like, the prose of this is good. Before this chapter, and I know it gets better in Dance, but before this chapter, there wasn't any scenes where I was like blown away by how good the writing was. But that did happen here. The dream sequence is incredible. I love how it slowly feeds you information to tell that like it's actually real and not just a fever dream. Like it starts off as things that could be like totally plausible that he could be dreaming about, and then it slowly trickles in stuff. It's like, oh shit, this is actually describing what's happening. And also him just waking up and being like, his name is Summer's great. So
yeah, I don't like dreams. I'm not a big dreams fan. It was one of my biggest problems with Wheel of Time. There's plenty of dreams in this series where I'm like, can we get on with it, guys? But this dream is excellent. And there are other excellent ones in the series, but like I really, really like this one. And yeah, I think the writing is just so good. And like you can like read it and then go back and reread it and like get more information from it like immediately after. Like it's just very layered.
also, again, speaking of chapters advancing the plot of other characters, it does the same thing where like the things that show you aren't the last thing you saw them doing. They're like one step forward of the last thing you saw them doing. So you can then extrapolate that things advance. And maybe like the Dance version of George would be Bran would dream all the things we saw the other characters doing in the last chapter. It's just really, really good.
Yeah. Also, Ned has the most chapters in the first book.
Yeah, I figured that out by the end. But
Yeah,
here I was like, wow, Catelyn's had a lot of chapters. And Roderick is wearing ringmail.
Oh shit, my boy Roderick.
He made mistakes. He might have lived if he wasn't wearing, if he were chainmail. Anyway, and Littlefinger's in his 20s. What the hell?
I know this blows me. I had forgotten that. I usually don't forget the ages, but when I did a reread, one of my first comments is Littlefinger's is in his 20s. Like I just always forget that. He's like 24 years old.
So the thing is, like, they aged Sansa's younger in the books, so he's still approximately equally creepy. But like, it's so close. If you just take book Littlefinger and like, well, it's still creepy because age aside, he's just a creep. But like, if you just take book Littlefinger and show Sansa, go not a pedophile.
Listen, I am not saying that Littlefinger is not creepy in the books, but he is way creepier in the show. Like
he's
just,
way creepier.
Just
an
Uncle Tom.
But the thing is, the person he's creeping on isn't 13.
Yeah, I get what you mean
in the show. Yeah. But yes, he's less creepy in the book, but still to 13-year-old. Which
I mean, it's still grody for sure.
And yeah, Jon's armor is just described as male. So, yeah, and then also this is the chapter where he gets the like letter that like Bran is living, and he was kind of like sulky before that, and instantly isn't, like when he finds out Bran's living, and it's just like it's exactly the reverse of like what we saw where Catelyn was like kind of took it out on other people and she was stressed by something. You see, like Jon is feeling that as well, and it's just like his mood is being affected in ways that like he doesn't consciously notice. And I would also love to see Ghost juggle. Jon is great in this book. I don't know if you remember that line.
I do, yeah.
But yeah, I love Jon in this book. Jon's funny. He has personality, and there's more stuff later though.
Yeah, that's the thing that I don't get. Like, I can understand not loving like the North or like the White Walker, like the storyline, or just not really liking Jon as a character. But like Alan, for instance, is always like Jon has no personality. I'm like, I have just never gotten that. Like, he is less personality centric than like Tyrion or something, but like he's still clearly, I don't know. I just don't
Jon's great. Alan's wrong. That's okay.
Yeah, he can be wrong.
Granted, this is my favorite Jon book. While it's definitely not like my favorite Tyrion book.
Tyrion has more personality, like, without a doubt.
Yeah, but this is comparing like in just this book, it's comparing like my favorite Jon book
Yes.
to like my third favorite Tyrion book. I guess it's my favorite Ned book, but that's by default. Anyway, moving on. Thorne is so annoying. He's such a meathead. When Tyrion says something to him, he's like, "You wouldn't say that if we were like fighting each other." It's such a meathead thing to say. Of like, this isn't a valid thing to say if you wouldn't also say it while I was beating the piss out of you. Like,
Yeah.
shut up.
Yeah, Thorne sucks.
And then, like, I feel like a lot of Arya stuff's happening. It's only Arya's second chapter, and they're in King's Landing already. Like,
yeah.
gets a
I
lot of
know
stuff
that is surprising, even now that you say it. Like, I guess it is just because she gets progressed in Sansa and
Yeah.
Ned's chapters and everything too. So
No, he has more personality than that. This is wrong. I have more examples of him
I
being
do not
great.
believe this at all. I don't understand this at all.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
you know who I would say this about is way more. It's Simon from Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. And I'm not even saying that as a diss towards that series. Like, I like Dragonbone Chair, but Simon has way less personality than Jon.
Simon's so useless as well.
Yeah,
like
like,
he
he
might
just-
be the least capable fantasy protagonist. But no, it isn't. Like I'm going through. I have a bunch of examples of him having personality.
Zin read this book like 15 years ago, and he just never reread. And then he's like, "These are my opinions forever."
See, I've been gaslighted into thinking this because I remember Jon was my favorite the first time I read it, and now I reread it, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like he has like personality in like every line of dialogue in his. Like he's just like he's sharp. He's quick. He's clever.
He's sharp.
Like,
you sound like a grandfather when you say that.
I don't know how to
he's my
describe.
sharp grandfather.
Shut up. He's great. Anyway, Viserys is wearing ringmail. Probably wouldn't have helped him due to his method of death, but I'm just saying Viserys is wearing ringmail. And here, this is where I start to develop people who wear ringmail die theory.
Yeah, I saw. I've been reading.
And then we have Bran. Like, do you know how many Bran and Jon? Like every single person is like almost a man grown, but it's part of Bran's character. He always thinks he's a man grown.
I mean, Bran, thinks he's an adult. You skipped over Arya's or the line in the Arya chapter.
Yes.
When the snows fall and the white wind blows, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. Is that the same chapter? No, I guess it would have been when she was leaving with Jon, when they say at the end of the wars they'll find you dead with a needle in your hand or whatever.
Yeah, that would because that was
way
Arya
earlier.
1. That was Arya 1. No, the only other option.
Okay.
But yeah, this was they're in King's Landing, and this is Ned talking to Arya about being stop fighting with your sister, basically. Like, you can fight with your sister in summer when we're at peace, but like we need to band together here.
Yeah, really good.
Okay, that is show Jon. That's illegal. That's not even early show Jon. That's late show Jon.
Trash.
In fact,
trash.
I may have to ban you, Zen, for that comment. Unless you like apologize in some way for conflating season 8 Jon with
book 1 Jon.
With book 1 Jon. Despicable. Robb Stark is also wearing ringmail. Jon, just mail. Robb Stark, ringmail. Just saying. I know he wasn't wearing armor when he died. So, but still.
He's telling us something.
Yeah, this seems like more of a you problem than a book Jon problem. So stop projecting that into thinking this, okay? Terrible. Here's Ned being kind of thick. Like, why are you telling Pycelle that you suspect poisoning when you are thinking about how little you trust him? Like, I don't trust this guy at all, but I'm gonna tell him my suspicions. Like, Ned.
You know what though? In fairness, so okay, I'm gonna defend him a little bit. I agree with you, but I notice this all the time that I do, where I won't really trust someone, and then they'll just like ask me a question, and I'll just like way overshare because I'm just like a trusting person, and it's not like, you know, life or death Ned Stark situations, but as I'm doing it, I'm like, why am I telling this guy all this information? Like, I don't trust him. He's gonna like rat me out to my boss or whatever the situation might be. So I feel like honest people, they just let it out, man.
So I will say slightly, but at least a longsword is a valid weapon to use in the Middle Ages compared to ringmail. Okay, that's kind of fair, but also like Pycelle isn't even asking him that many questions. Like, he just volunteers this. Like,
yeah, he does. Wait. Well, how do you say his name?
What? Whose name?
How do you say the maester's name?
Pycelle?
Okay, never mind. Now I'm just hyper focused on how you don't know how to talk. That's fine.
Hey, that's rude. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Sam. Also, Sam, male, not ring male. Good work. So here I'm like, so far, perfect correlation between wearing ring mail and death by the ends of Dance with Dragons. And I have this. So this never occurred to 17-year-old me, but Sam's dad is such a dickhead. Not because of like the main things. Like, he could have just sent him to be a maester.
Charlies don't serve. That's a whole thing later on. You'll remember. I mean, like, he's absolutely an asshole. Like, he's the worst of the worst. But like in the 4th book, when Jon sends him off to be a maester, he has like this whole thing is addressed. Like, I'll just let you experience it, but it is specifically addressed.
Okay, fine. Anyway, I love Jon. He's friends with Sam. Also, his entire thing, we're seeing Sam there and not being like, haha, this guy's fat, and being like, and taking care of Sam's great. Jon's great.
Would you say that has personality?
I would say he has personality in these scenes, yes.
Interesting. Wow. Hot take.
Yeah. Frey men are wearing ring mail. They don't specifically die, but I just thought it'd be noted.
Well, they'll die eventually. Unless it's Perwyn. Was it Perwyn Frey? My man Perwyn?
No, they're just soldiers are wearing ring mail.
Oh, okay.
Which is probably why they don't actually get in battles, because they know they don't actually have armor, and they'll just be
We're
killed.
Just wearing clothing. We gotta stay out of that.
Yeah, like, we're like, shit, we're just wearing clothing. These people have, like, actual armor. We should probably just, like, show up late to battles. Whatever. So here I tell Catelyn to never do what she cannot undo until she's considered what she cannot do once she's done it. Because this is her arresting Tyrion very brashly. And also I like that, like, the 2 main events that have shot the plot forward have been, like, kind of due to chance. Like, if Bran happened to climb a different tower, like, that doesn't happen. And if Tyrion happened to stay at a different inn, I know everyone stays at the inn at the crossroads. Whatever. If they
or
just
could have just been a different day.
Different day.
He could have been in the stables when she came in. Like, there's all sorts of stuff. You know?
Tons of different stuff could have happened. And I just really like that. And also, like, reading this made me question all the, like, it's all Littlefinger's master plan. Littlefinger didn't plan this. I know he ran with things and he planned other things.
Yeah, he's an excellent, like, having an A through F plan, and he just flows with the chaos.
Yeah. Anyway, and yes, Hobbin and A Song of Ice and Fire commented, Derry, I'm literally wearing the Wolves Have No King shirt.
I need to buy that shirt. I really want it. I'm wearing a Pantera shirt, so nothing related at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, on one hand, she was directly told this by someone she kind of trusts.
I do not blame Catelyn for initially believing that it's Tyrion. I blame her for this dumb as hell decision to do this.
Yeah.
Without thinking about the consequences. But I do believe, based on her information and her life and everything else leading to that she would believe that Tyrion did it in that moment. She has no reason to believe otherwise.
But she does what she cannot undo without considering what she cannot do.
I just hate that. She started the war. Like, she's absolutely...
And so I have a note later. She's mad that, like, they won't sue for peace. And it's like, you started this. Like, they're as angry as you were then. Like,
and she never once considers that. Like, other people in the books pointed out a little bit. Like, they'll be like, oh, like, your wife's starting all these fights or whatever. But no point in any of her POVs does Catelyn ever say, oh, if I hadn't taken Tyrion hostage, none of this would have happened. Not once. And I hate that so much. I'm like, Catelyn,
she's really, like, annoyingly arrogant, isn't she?
I know, so arrogant.
Anyway, I was way more annoyed with Catelyn, like, on this read than previous reads.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I'm annoyed every read.
Yeah. Although I will admit that talking about how she's going to take the King's Road and then taking the High Road was clever. But it's clever, not wise. Like, Catelyn's clever, but just arrogant, whatever. Okay, we have our first Balon Swan sighting. I took note here. I don't know who knows the backstory of this. This man below me is the biggest Balon Swan fan on planet Earth.
I probably, for sure, like, I definitely like him more than George R. R. Martin. It started as, like, a meme, but, like, I've always liked him. And then it just became a thing where I'd be like, actually, Balon Swan's pretty cool. And then nobody knew who it was. So then I'd be like, I'm a bigger fan than these people because I know that Balon Swan's awesome. And then it's just like, now it's just evolved. But I do genuinely, like, wholeheartedly think he's a really cool minor character that people don't. Like, if Barristan Selmy or, like, Jaime Lannister did some of the stuff that Balon Swan does in, like, the second book, people would never shut up about it. But because it's Balon Swan, they're just, like, they don't even pay attention to it. So anyway, you can continue.
Anyway, and I know you're an influence on me, because I'm like, agreed that the Seven Kingdoms would resound to the sound of their names. Sir Balon Swan, which I spelt wrong, because I was typing on my phone as I wrote these. And some other losers, who cares? And then the next, like, scene, he loses to the mountain. And I'm like, that's okay, you can lose to the mountain. That's allowed. And then Loras Tyrell is 16. What is going on?
He's a child.
Like, no, stop it. I just rewatched Winds of Winter, and I was like, Loras Tyrell, if this happened in the books, would be like, what, like 18 at this point? Like,
maybe 19-ish. It's been about 2.5 years.
I fully appreciate this Guardsman Blake. I had a bunch of stuff about that in Royal Assassin. He's a phenomenal character, and he's great. Okay, sorry, I had to get that over.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but again, I've read that once, so I'm on the opposite end of it, where it's like I vaguely remember that character, but not why he's cool. So,
he also might have scenes later.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm betting on Kingsguard because 5v1s don't work like that.
I don't even. Okay, that is a straw man to what I'm saying, because Balon Swan was not in the fucking Kingsguard at that point, and also Jaime, who is very critical about people being swordsmen, consistently all the time is pro Balon Swan in all of his chapters, all of his thoughts that go with Balon Swan. He's like, this guy is a good choice. He's the only good choice Cersei ever did. When he talks to Balon Swan, he's like, you're an honorable man. Like, you're worthy of the Kingsguard. And then when Cersei sends him to Dorne, and then she has stupid idiots doing Kingsguard stuff, he's like, if you didn't send Balon to Dorne, I would be able to do stuff without stupid idiots, but you sent the non-stupid idiot to Dorne. So no, Jaime did not say that, Zin. You are wrong. Continue your story, Jake.
Boom, roasted. Anyway, I love Moon. By the way, speaking of Farsi, Moon Boy is an obvious reference to the Fool.
Yes.
A fool in motley with a sharp tongue. Should have told Catelyn to never do what she cannot undo until she's considered what she cannot do once she's done it. Yeah, and then Rob is like, Ned is like delusionally optimistic about Robert smashing Tywin. Like, have you seen Robert lately? I don't know how much smashing he's doing, but
he's doing smashing.
Not only do I think he would not win that war, like I don't think he would win single combat against Tywin at this point. Yeah. And yeah, here we have this. So we get Littlefinger betting on Jaime and Renly saying if Tyrion were here, he would have won double. And I just like this is a random conversation on first read if you're not paying attention, but like the amount of conversations that seem random but directly translate to the plot is just really, really impressive. And I've got Balon Swan came second in archery, so
which I remembered off the top of my head before we started.
He did, and before this episode, he mentioned this. I forget the context, and I was like, "Yeah, I wrote that down."
And do you remember who the first one was? Who won?
I don't.
Okay, they come back later. And Guy the Archer, they're in more books.
I think Ned hires him for like. Ned was like, okay.
No, Ned tried to hire him, but already he doesn't say yes. He's like, I'm drinking and whoring with my winnings.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. But he does come back.
So now you should also have doubts about how well you remember Jon Snow's personality in the Game of Thrones. Yeah, and then we got Varys. So I have a question here. Varys is talking about how like he thinks Cersei like killed Jon Arryn and then killed Sir Hugh because Sir Hugh was like had Gregor kill Sir Hugh because Sir Hugh was the only witness. But like, didn't Littlefinger kill Jon Arryn, or is that a show only invention? I'm pretty sure it's in the books as well.
Littlefinger killed Jon Arryn. So
is Varys mistaken, or is he trying to trick Ned here? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't think we ever know. I think George got a get a jail free pass here with Littlefinger and Varys being very crafty individuals that know a lot of stuff that we are not privy to. I think he was able to hand wave this away. I think in the first book he wrote it and then he kind of he wanted it to be like a good mystery, engaging novel, and then he didn't really think everything through, because there's no reason for Sir Hugh to be killed here, unless the actual answer is just that the Mountain was mad and he just killed him. Yeah, and
unless
then
the Mountain just saw his armor was on wrong and was like,
yeah,
I'm gonna
he
kill
was
this
like,
dude.
I like killing people. It's been 4 days since I killed somebody, so
That's possible. And I know George R. R. Martin is an underrated action writer, and I stand by this. His action scenes are consistently quite good. Yeah.
George R. R. Martin is the person who actually made me think I like action scenes, because I read him fairly early on in my reading journey, and then so like I was like, I just like battle scenes, and then I would read battle scenes. I'm like, this isn't as good, and I'm like, oh, it's just that George writes really good ones. So
he does. Characterization in action, woo. And the Tyrion action scene against like the Mountain Clan was quite good. And then I have one time my minor pet peeves is when someone overhears a plan and then like recounts it perfectly. And I love how terrible Arya's recollection of Varys and Nymeria, like their conversation is,
especially because they're speaking in code and she's like a kid. Like it's like she would sound ridiculous when she's trying to recall that conversation. Also, that conversation is really, really good.
Yeah, that as well. That conversation is really, really good. And as I said, as I have here, also Mr. I serve the realm is sus and doesn't want war yet.
Well, okay. I don't think so. In the books, Varys says he serves the realm, but that's just what he says. But in the show, they were just like, we're cutting the Blackfires and anything else more complicated. Yeah. So that just became his actual character. I don't think he means it when he says it in the books.
Yeah, I think the showrunners believed believed his press.
I mean,
in the books,
them not understanding a character color.
I know, it's shocking. Yeah. Definitely won't come up tomorrow when we're talking about the Winds of Winter. Which is mid. Okay, and then I'm like, no, Ned, don't think about having another kid. That's a death flag in a book. Don't you know you're in a book, you idiot?
It is funny that, like, that is for sure, but nobody thought that because it's like
it's like he's the protagonist. Obviously, he's not going to die. And I have Littlefinger's really sneaky. Like, he tells Ned about the brothel where he can find, like, where Jon Arryn was going, right as Ned is about to leave King's Landing. Like, he knew what was going on all along. And Ned, of course, does not go like, hey, it's kind of weird that he's only telling me this now. I wonder what he wants from me. But that would have been hard to figure out. Because Littlefinger comes across as very helpful. And here I have Maya Stone is wearing ring mail. I forget this character and therefore assume she dies. Pretty sure she's romances. And then I'm like, I'm pretty sure she's alive in A Dance with Dragons.
She's alive. She's still alive. She's in the a sample chapter for Winds of Winter.
Yeah, I thought she was.
Yeah.
So that she needs to die for ringmail.
You know what though? So I totally believe Bran could and might probably die in the series at some point. But Maya Stone, I'm not saying she can't die. Like, anybody can die, but I mean, it's less likely to me that she will be killed. But I mean, we'll see.
She might break ringmail theory.
Maybe.
Disappointing. Yeah, now that also I'm a bit old, like the first time I read this, I was younger than Rob. But I'm more aware that like Rob is a kid who's in way over his head here, but also kind of a badass.
Yeah, he's a talented kid. He's just in over his head.
Yeah. And I can picture like all the people who agreed to fight Tyrion collectively shit themselves for the brief second when they realized they might be fighting Jaime. But then they're not fighting Jaime, and they all collectively unshit themselves.
One thing I really like about rereads of this series is like, and I don't think George planned all this. Like, I mean, the Balon Swan thing we were talking about earlier, and like Angway, but he'll like name drop a couple characters, and they'll just be random names. But then with context later on, like, so Lynn Corbray is the first or second person to offer to fight Tyrion in this scene, and at the time he's just a random name. But in the fourth book, he's a huge badass, and he has a Valyrian steel sword called Lady Forlorn that he took from his like dad's dying corpse on the battlefield, and like people just know he's just like this crazy fighter. But at the time, that wasn't plotted. Like, I don't think George had that in mind for the character. But it just in hindsight, it would have been like that would have been a pretty badass fight, Lynn Corbray versus Bran. But
yeah, who do you think takes that, Kyle?
Lynn, for sure.
Okay.
Based on the information we have, it would be Lynn. But you know, Bran's whole thing of like tiring out the guy in armor and being underrated works against strong fighters too. So He could still do the same thing.
Yeah, Bronn at least thought he had a chance against the Mountain. So presumably,
Bronn's a very good fighter, but he's very smart and he knows his strengths.
So I definitely give it to Lynn for the reason that Bronn is wearing ringmail, which is both heavy and does not stop swords.
Valyrian steel swords do go through clothing.
Does he have the Valyrian steel sword at this point?
Yes, it happened.
So actually, ringmail is the same as chainmail when people have Valyrian steel.
Yep. All works out.
So if you want to play Valyrian Steel Simulator and you want it to be like everyone you fight has Valyrian steel swords, just wear ringmail.
I think you're hacking the system.
Anyway, that's cool. I didn't know that. All right. Ned's "I dreamt an old dream" is a great line. And also, so this is like this Cersei lies to the point where it's almost me criticizing the book. Like, it's such a stupid lie. I honestly don't even know if someone as dumb as Cersei could come up with it. Cersei's excuse is she claims Ned was coming home drunk from a brothel. Like that, those are words she says.
Listen, this
trying
is
to be
totally,
convincing.
this totally. I have so for one, nobody knows Ned, so they hear the reputation of Ned, and they're just like, we don't believe this. Like, yeah, sure. Like, I don't think Renly would believe this. Like, Renly has interacted. Or like Barristan, like they're like, no, that doesn't sound like Ned. But like the common folk, like they're just like,
she's saying this to convince Robert though, and she knows Robert is a huge Ned fanboy, and like everything she'd hear about Ned would come from Robert. So like she would know that Robert. Oh yeah, this is what she said.
Okay, I remember the exact scene you're talking about now. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like Robert's an idiot. Like.
But Robert, of course, doesn't believe it. He hits her. Like, obviously, he won't believe it. It's the most ridiculous lie of all time, especially for who's trying to believe it's the worst lie ever. Like, come on. And I get Cersei's kind of an idiot, but like, really?
She's very.
I get Cersei is an idiot, but like,
dude, I can't wait for your Feast for Crows reactions on Reread for Cersei's chapters. They're gonna be bananas. How much do you remember of her storyline, like her specific chapters in Feast?
I remember she slept with people a lot, and I remember she
slept with less than you think you remember.
Okay, and I remember she was like, "What if we give more power to the faith?" And then it didn't backfire. And I just remember general,
it'll be fun
decision making. And here I was very disappointed. I'm like, Bronn is wearing ringmail. No chance he would wear ringmail. Like, he's not that stupid. This was the first one where I was like, this is extremely disappointing. Even if ringmail existed in world, Roderick would never be wearing it. He's anyway, ringmail's stupid. Whatever. If George releases an anniversary edition of A Game of Thrones and the only change is he changes the word ringmail to chainmail in every instance, I will up this book by 0.2. Okay?
So a 10.1 out of 10?
If I gave it 9.9 and he does that, I will switch it to 10.1. I can't say I do that with everywhere because the thing is, a Storm of Swords legitimately could end up being like. Anyway, yeah, like, come on, George does though. George, I give full credit. He's one of the few fantasy authors who makes armor useful, and it's great. Like the duel with Barristan in A Dance with Dragons, Victorian wearing armor and like his battle there. Like, it's so good. But then he has people wearing ringmail. It's so disappointing. A2, George. A2.
If Jimmy ever gets George R. R. Martin on Chatting with Nuts, you have to beg him to ask about the ringmail.
I'll go in the comments. I guess I'll be like, George, do you know what ringmail is?
Jimmy will not ask that. He'll be too busy gushing over Fever Dream.
And I'll be like, but ringmail. Thank you, Derry. And thank you, Tanner. Okay, here we have, like, the show for season 1 is almost a scene-by-scene adaptation. I believe this scene is not in the show, and it's great. It's Jon talking to Aemon, which I misspelled because phone. Leave me alone. He goes to Aemon and convinces Aemon to, like, have Sam advance to the Night's Watch because he's worried that once they become brothers to the Night's Watch, all the new people, like, beat the shit out of Sam. And like the case he makes is good. He's not just like doing this because like he's not trying to like trick Aemon. He's like, listen, like Sam is never going to be a good fighter, but like he could be helpful here. Like he's smart. He's not an idiot. He just is not equipped for what they're putting him through.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, any scene with Jon talking to Aemon is great. Aemon is one of the best characters in the series, and I wish he had more scenes because he's great.
So I have a note later in this that we'll get to that's about Aemon, and we'll see if you agree, but I think you will. And you know, Tyrion never really does give them the Veil of Aaron. He tells them, I give you the Veil of Aaron. Kinda, but I think they still have the Veil. But whatever. So maybe a Lannister doesn't always pay his debts.
Maybe.
Oh, and then this was Ned sentencing Sir Gregor to die. And I'm sure choosing Beric and Thoros instead of Ilyn Payne will have no long-term consequences.
I mean, what would have happened if he chose Ilyn Payne? They just would have died, and nobody would have.
Yeah, I mean for the world in general.
Yeah,
I'm sure it will have no ripple effects. And also it gets mentioned like that Ilyn Payne would be like mad at Ned and hold a grudge, which obviously he would have killed him anyways. But it's still kind of funny because I'm reading and I know Ilyn's going to kill Ned, obviously.
I think it's one thing to bear in mind here is Loras getting denied.
Yeah.
I think that's important for Loras's long-term character development and how he sees the world and stuff. But the fact that he really wanted to go and fight the Mountain and Ned does not let him is a very Ned thing to do because it's like, no, you're 16, like, no, like. But again, I mean, I'm going to highlight this all the time because it's one of my favorite things. Like the fact that Beric and Thoros are literally just names. Like Beric is vaguely a guy that Sansa has a crush on, and then just like he becomes this like whole secondary plot line with like all this magic and stuff later on.
Yeah, I mean, they're generally, I mean, it's the Brotherhood without banners, obviously, and they're great.
Yeah.
And here you're going to start seeing the numbers being confused because I start keeping track of what number they are. George, can you just write the number next to the name?
It's so annoying.
Can you just write Tyrion 2? Like,
I know.
Like, I get doing it here, but now you know it's huge, and you know people keep track of the chapters with like calling them like Bran 3. So could you please just write?
I mean, there's all these like special editions. Like, why can't we just do that in the special editions?
Yeah, just like
re-release
Bran 3, and also in the special editions change ringmail to chainmail. Just that's all you need to change. And make Tyrion not do a backflip. Yeah.
So he's basically Gunslinger, the book, which is that Stephen King wrote the Gunslinger when he was like 19, and then he started releasing more Dark Tower books, and then he was like, shit, this isn't what I wanted at all. So he just went back as like a 40-year-old man and just rewrote parts of the Gunslinger, and then he was like, this is now the Gunslinger. That's what he should do.
But do it way less, okay?
Yeah.
Whatever. So I don't even remember. This was peak Sansa being Sansa. That's all I wrote. I don't know what it was in reference to, but this chapter was the most Sansa has ever been Sansa. I think it was her being like, how could he not send Sir Loras?
Yes, that's what I was just trying to say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't like writing in books, but honestly, like, I could be convinced to take a pen and just Roman numerals, just like 1, 2.
Yeah, and like my shitty paperbacks, like I would definitely do that if I thought of it. Not on my like nice copies.
Stop it.
Andrew's here for maximum chaos.
Hi. We're complaining about ringmail and also generally complimenting the plotting of a Game of Thrones. How are you, Margaret? I don't know if Kyle knows Margaret. She's actually in Daniel Green's Discord. Generally a person with takes who you will appreciate about A Song of Ice and Fire.
Sounds good.
We're just about to start talking about how, let's see, what are all the things that we're going to talk about how Song of Ice and Fire is totally grimdark. And what are the other Margaret things? I forget. Whatever.
I also agree that it's grimdark, but
no, Margaret does not agree that it's grimdark.
Okay, well.
But whatever. Anyway, I'm like, maybe if Viserys had better armor, he would have lived. Unlikely, I will grant. But and Daenerys really does go full Dothraki. Yeah.
Now, I will say, at the end of the first season, I read up the first 4 books, and I told my mom, and I specifically remember having this conversation with her, that I think Daenerys is going to end up being the villain, and they're going to have to fight her at the end. And my mom did not think that was the case. So I only have the first 4 books to go off of, and the first season. But this scene was not the reason that I thought that. But I know that the dumbass show writers were like, well, in the first season, she burns her brother, and then she looks kind of not sad about it, so she's gonna burn an entire city down. And I'm just like, you guys.
I don't think that follows.
Yeah.
I'd like to apologize. Margaret, if you want to give the answer here, sure. Although I think in terms of like optimism or pessimism about human nature, I think it's definitely like Joe Abercrombie, for example. Definitely, after I read him, I feel worse about humanity compared to George. I think that's a great
hopeful stuff. Like, it's not super deep. Like, if there's a grimdark scale, like I don't think it's like all the way to the end, but there's a lot of like morally great, like a lot of, if you're just like defining what grimdark is, most of what people use to define grimdark is in A Song of Ice and Fire. But then there's things like no chance and no choice, which I know Jake does not remember that line, but when he gets to it, he'll be like, that's a good fucking line. And then so there's moments where it's not. So
anyway, moving on. So I have a lot of the time, like, antagonists, they're failing is they can't understand that like that other people aren't the same way they are. And Ned has this same issue. Like, he just can't imagine that like Littlefinger going against the line of succession. Like, he's thinking like, because he's thinking, yes, it's inconvenient that Stannis is king. And once he says it and he's the hand of the king, he never even considers that Littlefinger, even though Littlefinger just suggested treason, would be like, hey, I shall not go with what the hand of king instructed me in the proper air, and it gets him killed.
I know, like, that whole scene is just so frustrating because he's just like, I don't trust Littlefinger. And then Littlefinger says a treasonous thing. And he's like, no, don't do that. Also, I don't trust you. Just do what I say. And then
My plan shall rely upon the fact that you are going to do what I say.
Oh, man. Poor Ned. Pouring out for our boy.
And then I have the Night's Watch vows are badass.
Yes.
I'd forgotten that the book Night's Watch vows were different than the show Night's Watch vows, and the book Night's Watch vows are like even more badass. Some of the lines are the same, but they add some lines. Like, they've got the fire against the cold.
I think the book one or the show one is just shortened, isn't it?
It's shortened, but it's also just generally not as good. Where even would this be in? I don't. Whatever. You can all go read it on your own line.
Like, I believe you. I believe you. I just thought in my head that it was like just like they cut out some of the lines.
So they kind of did, and then they moved some things around, and it just made it less cool. Okay, 1 second. You know what? Fuck it. We're finding this. If anyone wants to take a very short break, now is your chance. I think I need to find a Jon chapter so I can figure out where I am, and then I'll be able to find it from there. Oh, okay. We have... Okay, so then that was him. Okay, so that I found, I think Jon 5 was him telling... Okay, I found Jon 5. Next Jon chapter, which there's a few chapters in between. Eddard, Daenerys, Jon. Okay. Yeah. No.
I just want to know while I'm looking through this. So, like I said earlier before Margot got here, I had the screen full, so I don't see comments until I specifically minimize it. So, did you say no chance and no choice separately from when I said it, or did I say that so then you're referencing? Like, did we both use that as an example separately?
No, I think Derry commented that in reply to you mentioning it.
Oh, okay, got you. Okay.
All right,
Oh, I totally agree with you, Margot, by the way.
I think Margaret was referencing that you said it. That was after your comment.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Hear my words and bear witness to my vow. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. I am the fire that burns against the cold, the light that brings the dawn, the horn that wakes the sleepers, the shield that guards the realms of men. I pledge my life and honor to the Night's Watch for this night and all nights to come. It's not that different, but just when you say both out loud, it just has a nicer rhythm to it, you know? Like, if I Google Night's Watch vows, the show version comes up, and it's annoying. And this time anyway, you know what I mean. It's just nicer. Yes, okay. So he said she already had it as the peak example, though. So you're of one mind when it comes to
Nice.
that. Yeah, so Ned could have worked with Littlefinger and then also not made his entire plan rely upon the fact that Littlefinger wouldn't commit treason while he just heard Littlefinger suggest treason to him.
I agree with this too. Margot has good takes.
Yeah. All right. So now I have the Hound is wearing normal, ring nail not Minger, and then the Syrio fight. So I'm not fully convinced Sirio's dead in the books. Like
I'm 100% not convinced.
Yeah, beating Meryn should be like a lot easier than beating 5 guardsmen. Like fighting 5 people at once.
Well, okay, his stick broke.
Yeah, still.
And also Meryn was in full Kingsguard armor. So the dude is alive. Like I just think he's alive or something's going on because.
But like fighting 5 people is a lot more than 5 times harder than fighting 1 person.
Yes,
and like the Lannister guardsmen also had armor, and like his stick broke fighting Meryn. So anyway,
also,
I think he
every single time Meryn is mentioned in this entire series is somebody talking about how he's a chump. Literally, yeah, exactly. Everybody. Like,
so the other possibility is that he's dead and George just wanted him to like have his moment first. But in the show, it's only 1v3, so that makes it more realistic. So if that's the case, the show's better. Just saying.
Realism over everything.
Yeah.
I don't think he's dead.
Is like not. Whatever.
I don't think he's dead because in the 4th book, he had the exact time to put this to rest, and Cersei just says that he interfered and doesn't say anything more. So I think
yeah. So anyway, I think Syrio is alive in the books. Whatever. And I'm disappointed he wasn't alive in the show. And here, Jon 7. I forget what Jon 7 was, but it made me say Jon is definitely my favorite character in this book. Yeah. I actually don't remember what Jon 7 was, but I don't care.
What was so the previous chapter was the Syrio one. It wouldn't be when he abandons.
I mean, it's the Jon 6 was him swearing the Night's Watch.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think what happened. Oh, that's when he saves Mormont, maybe? Because when they swear the oaths is when he finds Uther and Jaffin Flowers, the dead, and then they bring them back. So Jon 7 is probably when he saves Mormont.
It might, or does it end with him being locked in the prison, like in the room because he tried to kill, because he attacked the dude who like shit talked Ned?
I don't know. They're around the same time.
Margaret does like Sansa.
I also
okay,
like
that
Sansa.
Actually is probably what happened. But whatever.
Yeah, that's
but I think he's alive.
I do too.
All right, and then we have Bran says he's nearly a man grown, and then I have. Do we need to know? George is like, I think we should specifically mention that Hodor has a huge dick. Okay, whatever.
How else are we going to know that he's related to Sir Dunk the Tall? There's going to be a scene in the 5th one of the Dunk and Egg novellas where where old Nan is young Nan, and she's going to be like, look at the pace on that guy. And then we're going to be like, it's confirmed that he's the great-grandfather of Hodor.
No.
But I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, so this first Tywin scene, we get to see how clever he is and how arrogant he is with like his general plan, but also being like, Robb Stark's just a boy, blah 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 blah. And also I have that I think the Vale Mountain clans are a bit disappointing culture-wise in terms of like fantasy cultures, but they're a small part of the show, the book, series, whatever. But like, does anyone disagree with that, or is everyone on team Vale Mountain clans kind of mid?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I see what you're saying, but I just feel like they're like just kind of scary in the way that they come around. Like I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
And then I randomly related it to Dresden, by the way, in the next comment, because I'm me. Because this is why Varys is like, this is why they're so scared of Ned. Like, he's not going to give up as long as he thinks he's right. And I'm like, yeah, this is why people are scared of Harry. Because, like, once he's convinced he's right, he's not giving up. Anyway, yeah. I interrupted your Mountain Clan thing.
No, I was just going to say, like, I get what you mean, but I just think it's that they're so periphery and that, like, you have Red Fire and Blood. Yes, yeah. Obviously you did a tier. So, like, the whole thing, I think they get better with the context of, like, how the Burning Man probably came around with Nettles bringing her dragon up to hide in the Vale and how they burn stuff. So I think there's definitely a connection there. And I also think that George is setting up for Tyrion to have allies when he comes back. Because Bronn, so like Tyrion leaves, and then Tyrion's allies are then kind of separated and put on the shelf for later. Like Bronn becomes basically Lord Stokeworth, and he's just hanging out, collecting sell swords right near the capital. And then Shaga, son of Dolph, is scared off, and then Chella and Timet go back to the Vale. So I just feel like they're gonna come back when like Daenerys and Tyrion come back, and then he's gonna like help them take the Vale. I just feel like they're not done yet, so I think we'll see.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, there is more going on in the Vale in the book. Like, there's actually characters in the Vale for the next book. Unlike, Littlefinger didn't sell Sansa to Ramsay.
Also, like, Jan Royce, who is the father of Waymar Royce, is a super badass. He's a very like Balon Swan type character where like the first time you're reading it, you maybe vaguely might be like, yeah, he's pretty cool. But actually whenever anybody talks about him, he's a badass, and he's always very fair and just. And he's this like warrior, and he like fights in all these tourneys, and he's like getting kind of older, but like people still really respect him. And then in the show, he's just this like craggly old man. And I'm just like, you ruined Bron's Jan Royce.
Anyway, thank you, Jerry. Moving on. I have another. I'm sure it'll have no impact later. I'm sure that marriage pact with Robb Stark will have no impact later.
His wives died.
Yeah, they all died. That's somewhat suspicious.
I think it's just that he pumps out so many kids. Like I'm sure some of the older ones, like they would have died.
I guess just from having that many kids.
But like,
I guess
if you look at like his genealogy, it's like all of his wives had like 7 kids, and like some of them died in childbirth. So
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. So here we have proposition: no character in A Song of Ice and Fire with less lines of dialogue is as good of a character as Aemon Targaryen.
So I probably agree with you, but Courtney Penrose is in like 3 scenes in the second book, and I think he's in 1 scene, but he has like 5 lines, and every single one of those 5 lines is like 10 out of 10. So I think if we're just condensing, I think Courtney Penrose is better. But
that would just mean I'm not saying he has the best character per line of dialogue. I'm saying no one with less lines of dialogue is better. So would you actually say Courtney, not per line, but overall, is a better character than
Aemon? No, I see what you're saying. No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so you could also say that about what was the character's name? I forget them.
Courtney Penrose.
Yeah, you could also say Courtney Penrose, that no character with less lines of dialogue is as good.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But about Aemon, I'm saying this.
Yeah.
And I'm actually I'm just going to switch to this really quickly so I can make the size better, like without showing the score. Although we're almost getting there. So, and then I have that Lewin's ability to dismiss supernatural things is actually borderline impressive at this point. Like every time he's told magic, he's so confident. It's like, no, there's like no magic. And it's like, I feel like you got to start at some point being like, I mean, it's not like in our world where I'd be like, no, there's magic, but it's like, okay, magic used to exist. That's verifiably like, that's a thing that's not really in dispute, but it's just not a thing anymore. And no, I'm 100% sure.
I mean, that's the Maesters though, right? They're just very arrogant in their knowledge.
Yes, but also then we have Tyrion 8, which it shows how little Tywin trusts anyone. He's also like, he thinks Jaime's gonna die, so he's like, I guess this is my kid, and we're rolling with it. But also I don't get like why he's restricting Shae doesn't seem to accomplish anything, and it ends up leading to, like, if I remember correctly, Tyrion wastes a lot of time just like hiding the fact that he's still banging Shae and that he brought Shae, and it's like.
I think that it's twofold. One is like it's tied with the Tysha thing and how like Tyrion's greatest like public shame. Like I know most people don't necessarily know it, but he married somebody, and so like publicly, it's like he has this need to have whores that people already latch onto Tyrion. So it's like part of it being like I don't want his weakness to affect our goals. And then secondly is perception, which is that Tywin is very interested in the way his family is perceived. And if he didn't restrict Shae from going to court, Tyrion would he's afraid anyway, that Tyrion would just bring Shae to court and be like, this is my paramour, and just like have her in court. And then people would laugh at the Lannisters.
That's fair, I guess.
Obviously, he didn't know Tyrion well enough to just be like, Tyrion's going to do it anyway. But I think that was his thought process.
Also, I feel like even if he didn't bring Shay, he would just find another whore in King's Landing. Like, I think there's a couple of them there.
2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
maybe
I know.
even like 6, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
Whatever. I don't know why I wore. Oh, that's good. When he was running, I'm like, why are you running? He brought ring mail when he was running, which is symbolism for the fact that it was a foolish decision to try and desert the Night's Watch. Some truly 200 IQ stuff going on here.
Yeah.
In a Game of Thrones, in ring mail being symbolism. So this is where I got really annoyed with Catelyn. Where Catelyn is really like upset, like these idiots won't sue for peace. And it's one, I forget, the person to talking to did try suing for peace, but that was like before people got like murdered and they got a better position. And it's like, you started the war without really like in your head for that scene. You did not consider like, hey, this could start a war. Like, guess what, Catelyn? It's a lot harder to stop a rock slide like once it's an avalanche than like when it's 2 rocks. And you were the first 2 rocks.
Yeah. She's the
anyway.
worst. I agree. Also, Derry says that I'm a proponent of the theory that the tunnel from the Tower of the Hand going to the Street of Silk is being used by Tywin. I absolutely 100% think that. To the point where at one of my rereads, maybe like my second or third, I actually like convinced myself it was revealed at some point to be Tywin. That's how sure of it I was that it was Tywin. I was like, oh yeah, this isn't revealed in like book 3 that this is actually Tywin. And then I'm like, oh, it never was. But I also think that.
I mean, this is some tough competition, right? Like,
listen, he has an irrational hatred for Catelyn. But she probably has the biggest fuck up. Like, as like,
yeah, I mean, in terms of consequences, she probably has the biggest individual fuck up.
The biggest fuck up is probably some minor character that, like, I don't know. I'll have to think about this. I'm gonna get back to you about the biggest fuck up in A Song of Ice and Fire, and it'll be official, by the way. It'll be
all right. You'll think about it. Like, you're not gonna be off top of your cup. Okay. All right. And the King of the North scene was cool. Rob being declared King of the North.
Nimble Dick is the biggest fuck up in A Song of Ice and Fire.
What?
Nimble Dick.
What did he do?
He just sucked for his whole life, and everybody hated him, and then he got led into a trap, and then he got killed.
Okay.
This is a Feast for Crows thing. You'll know.
All right, I'll get to it. So guess what? We're at the last chapter. Which,
dude, the King of the North gives me chills every time.
Yeah, it was great. That scene was great and makes much more sense than a certain season 6 version of King of the North that we'll talk about it tomorrow. Yeah, so I'm also so I'm not actually that mad at Catelyn for kidnapping Tyrion. I'm mad at her for not even reflecting upon the fact that she started the war.
I agree.
Like, she never thinks to herself like,
more.
She never occurs to herself like, hey, gee, I sure dropped the ball by like kidnapping Tyrion.
Yep.
Which ended up getting like Ned attacked in the street and starting this entire war.
And yeah, Tywin's a monster. Like just because I think that Tywin's reactions to things are just like monstrous doesn't mean that I think Catelyn isn't also.
Yeah, stupid. I think Catelyn's like arrogant. Tywin's just like a bad person. Like,
yeah.
And also it's true. Like, she's so aware of like when she's when Rob is acting, she's so aware of like what he's doing is smart and stupid, but she doesn't have the same awareness for her own action.
Yeah.
Which is honestly quite relatable. So
listen, I've never said she's a poorly written character. Oh, yeah. I just hate her. Like,
anyway, Daenerys walking into the fire was excellent, and the final line was excellent.
Yes, I love the final line.
Yeah, for the first time in 100 years.
I think that and Wolves Have No Kings are like the 2 favorite lines, like last lines of a
final lines. Yeah, those would be that's one of them as well. So below this, that's all the comments. I have my score. Okay. Now, after we've gone through all the notes, do you have any predictions of what
okay, so here's the thing. You were more positive than I was expecting. I mean, I was expecting you to be positive, but it was like more like obvious, enthusiastic praise. But I still think 9.5 is going to be too high for you. So I'm going to guess a 9.4.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm very positive for all the books above 9. You should have trusted your first guess because the score was in fact a 9.2.
I almost said 9.2. I changed my mind at the last second.
So I had it on my list. I had it at 90th, and it moved up. The 90th ranking was also like not the 8.5. It used to be quite a bit lower. It moved up to 58th, and I have it above Curse of the Challeon and below Jade Legacy for context. Those are the books I have it between.
Sorry, I was reading the comments. Say that again, or I guess I can just read it. It's above Curse of Challeon and below Jade Legacy. I can't be mad about that. I mean, I haven't read Curse of Challeon, but like it's better than it, so who cares? But Jade Legacy. If I was not an insane A Song of Ice and Fire fan, like if I was just coming to Game of Thrones the first time now, liking Jade Legacy more would not be ridiculous. So
okay, I'm glad you can understand. So the thing I wasn't. So going in, I didn't know how much I was going to like it. Like I saw Bookborn's review, and I was like, "Wait, is this just going to be like a 9.6 or something? Like, what's going on?" No, like there's definitely books I like. Like I do not like it as much as the 9.5s, and it wasn't in contention for that. Now it's worth noting. I'm assuming I will still be on team A Clash of Kings over Game of Thrones.
Probably it's a better book.
Yeah, so it's better. So that's a pretty good reason. I was more impressed with the plotting than I was expecting to be. In the back of my head, I'd kind of over time been like, wait, what? Like, is George? Am I gonna like his character work like basically as much as I like Hobbs, which is how it would get like 9.7? And like, I don't. I think Hobb is the better character writer, and like compared to Live Ship, but I think that for everything. So yeah, I would say,
I think at a certain point you just like you get so granular. Like I think Brandon Sanderson's like list of like living authors is kind of like he pointed this out where it's like at a certain point excellent is just excellent, and then it just like comes out like because I think Martin is a better character writer than Hobb, but I only think that because I have like 75 characters that I really care about in A Song of Ice and Fire, and I have like 7 that I care about in like do you know what I mean? But so they're doing different things. But I do think they're both at the same level. So I can totally get why somebody would prefer the other way around.
Except I'm kind of like I like Live Ship character compared to a Game of Thrones, like Ship of Magic compared to a Game of Thrones. Like in my head, I'm like, no, I thought Ship of Magic characters like still I still have a clear step above everyone.
It's fine that you're wrong, but that's okay. Like you think the Satrap and oh, what's that? Sorella?
That's fair. I might change. It's possible I'll change my mind, like in Storm or Feast or Dance, where probably like. So I was more impressed than I expected to be with plotting, and I thought like the character and prose, like I thought there was a chance I would have liked them even more. It's also possible that reverses a little bit as I get later into.
I agree with Margot. Like a Game of Thrones is excellent, but like. I think people shit on the last 2 books a lot, and obviously Storm of Swords is my favorite, and there's excellent character moments in that book, but his character writing goes to a next level in the 4th and 5th books. Like I think he gets very, very good at it. Like he just levels up, and that's not to say it's not good all the way through, but I do think it's a noticeable improvement over time.
I am pitting against them each other, so it's happening. But anyway,
I didn't pit them against each other. I specifically said they're doing different things, and then Jake chose violence.
Yes, I know. No, it shouldn't be guys. It should be guy. It's not plural. I am the person doing this. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't know like a 9.2 is pretty damn promising considering it's pretty comfortably it's not going to be, it'll be at worst my 3rd favorite. Like if my ranking stays the same, it'll be 3rd favorite, but I would expect the amount I like Feast more is going to go up the most.
Yeah. Feast is a wild card. I know that you will like it more, but like whether you'll like it more than a Game of Thrones, I don't know. I think because there's more character, quiet, like introspective moments, you might actually like it more, but I do think A Dance with Dragons will probably be your least favorite because it just has the most shit wrong with it.
But it's a 10 out of 10, Kyle.
It is. I don't make these rules. I mean, I do.
Hello. Coming in for the end of the talk. Hello. How are things?
Hello, Joanna.
But anyway, I mean, I obviously really enjoyed my reread. Like I liked it quite a lot. And I'm kind of looking forward to continuing and seeing how Clash goes. Because I really like Clash Kings. It's my favorite Tyrion book.
It is my favorite Tyrion book too.
And it's like introduces Sir Davos, so that's obviously good.
Davos
War
is
5 Kings.
I don't know the timelines of when you're rereading and when we're gonna get Bookborn to read this, but I know she wants to read it soon.
I have no idea when I'm going to reread Clash. Whenever I feel like rereading Clash.
Okay, well, read it faster so we can talk about it.
I'll think about it.
That is the nice thing about rereads, though. Like I've been rereading Stormlight, and like because it's a reread, I'm just like I'll pick it up whenever I want to.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can go kind of as slow as you want. Real question is, because he wrote a Game of Thrones quite a while ago. At some point, did he Google ringmail and stop using it? That's what I'll be looking for.
Interesting. You'll plot the evolution of the chainmail and ringmail.
Yes. Clash Prologue is incredible. Yeah, that as well.
So people always say that, and like again, I'm saying this with the caveat that I think the entire series is excellence, but like the second book Prologue is just not that good. Like it's good. Like it makes I really think Crescent like tells like a whole short story. Maester Crescent is really well done. It makes my heart break, but I'm like, it doesn't bring me the level of dread and holy shitness that 1 and 3 do.
Well, the problem with 1 is that all I saw is that they can stab through ringmail. And it's like, tough shit. But no, I mean, I think it's because Melisandre is so much bigger part, is like such a bigger part of book 2. And it's like the dread oh shit factor of Melisandre just like drinking the poison drink. And then, we have to now immediately deal with this is bigger than we're going to have to deal with this in like 6 books.
Yeah, but you don't know that at the beginning of Storm of Swords.
I don't know.
When you hear those horns go off, you're like, shit.
We'll see if I change my mind. But I remember, like, in hindsight, I'm like, the Clash Prologue is the most memorable.
Also, the thing that maybe is that I don't like Chet at all. So when I'm like, Chet's about to die, like that already gets my heart rate going. And then I'm like, there's this mutiny, but they're all going to get killed. Like, I don't know. It just really works for me. The second book is probably my third favorite prologue. Probably my third.
Okay.
5th is for sure the least. Like 5.
I don't even remember what the prologue of a dance.
Varamir Six Skins.
Oh yeah, whatever. What's the prologue for Feast? I don't remember either. I don't remember much for Feast or Dance.
The Pig Boy, and that one. Okay, so if you're just taking them on first reads only, the 4th one is actually the weakest because it's a character you've never met, interacting with a bunch of characters you've never met, doing things that don't seem important, but once you read that prologue and then you finish the book and maybe you ask some people or look around or reread it, that one shoots up quite a bit for me. But on first read, it's very, very dull.
Okay. So anyway,
wow,
it's been an hour and a half.
Everybody's just hating on the Song of Ice or the Storm of Swords prologue. I really like it because Chet is so repulsive. But anyway, it's fine that I'll stand it.
Okay.
That's fine. Interesting. That's probably irregular. Like I don't think it's poorly written. I just think that like the barrier of reasons why you wouldn't like it as much is higher, which is that like it's unfamiliar and it doesn't seem very important and it's a bunch of people that you don't know. But no, that's good. The end of the 4th book prologue is incredible.
So one more question, which is eventually when I get to A Storm of Swords, what score will I have to give A Storm of Swords to not be a hater?
Well, it has to be at least a 9.5. Like
that seems reasonable.
That seems reasonable. It should be higher, but less than 9.5, I think you just read it when you were tired. Like
yeah, I mean, I feel like if a Game of Thrones is a 9.2, and like I had it originally, I had like a Game of Thrones at 8.5 or something, and Storm of Swords at like 9.3, and then I bumped Storm of Swords up to 9.4, Game of Thrones up to 9, and Clash up to 9.2, which so I think there's no way it only goes up like 0.1, right? Like
like I think it should, like if I was to guess, like it should be like a 9.7 or something at least, but less than 9.5, I just won't even believe you. I'll just be like, start over.
Yeah. So basically, if I give it a 9.4, you're gonna be like, go read it again.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like, listen, Jake, I know you're stressed out that you no longer work with golf, but like go golfing a few times and then read it again.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, I'll give it a 9.9999.
I'll accept that.
I'm probably not gonna give it. If I would give it a 10 at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, less than 9.5. That I think that's reasonable. I think that's a reasonable expectation.
What was like besides the plotting? Like, what was your biggest surprise on reread in terms of like your enjoyment?
Oh, besides the plotting, I mean, I would say, I mean, in terms of like ranking, if I was ranking the things I think a Game of Thrones does really well, I mean, I knew the political intrigue was really good. The political intrigue is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Like it's outstandingly an outlier in how good it is. Especially I felt like the Littlefinger scene where like he tells Ned about the brawl, and I was just noticing like how clear it is that like he kind of knew what was going on. I would say how quickly he characterizes people. Like there are okay, so for example, you read Fool's Errand recently. When I read Fool's Errand, I very quickly went from I really like Fitz to Fitz is going to be my favorite character of all time. And like if I just read a Game of Thrones, I would not be like none of these characters would I be like this is going to be like one of my favorite characters ever. One A Song of Ice and Fire character ends up being one of my favorite characters ever, but I wouldn't have been able to call which one after Game of Thrones. It's Jaime. He's my favorite character in the series.
Same.
But how quickly he gets people like, oh, bye, Margaret.
Bye.
Yeah, you and Derry would get along, Margaret. So join more Discords that Derry is in.
And that Kyle is in. Like, who cares about Daniel Green server? There's 1,000 people in there.
Well, Margaret has a server, so.
Oh.
But I think it's exactly invite only. So it's
okay.
You have to be special and cool.
I was ruined. I'm not going to be invited because of my bad takes about
I don't think so.
Clash of Kings.
Anyway, but how efficiently he characterized people. Like my example of Viserys, like literally from his first line. For those of you who weren't here, this is Viserys's first line in the entire book. This is beauty. Touch it. Go on. Caress the fabric. And it's like he's not insulting anyone or being mean. And instantly it's like, I hate this dude sucks. He's the main like antagonist in this of Daenerys's plotline. Not the Dothraki, even though like the Dothraki probably should be more of like a problem because of the whole rape thing. But the weird way that's written aside, Viserys is like the antagonist, and I hated him instantly. Same thing for like the prologue. I was like, Royce was a complex character instantly, so that definitely like really impressed me. Those are the main three things where I was like, wow, this is like these three things are incredibly well done. The plotting definitely is the thing that surprised. Like, if I think Sanderson is the best at like setup and payoff, like this book might be the best book at progressing the plot. That like. And having every chapter progress the plot that like I've ever read.
Well, you're not going to always get that with George R. R. Martin.
Yeah, well,
I mean, listen. I love the chapters where it's just like, oh, we're going to learn like with like Davos exploring White Harbor. I'm like, yeah, pump that shit into my veins, but like it doesn't advance the plot really that much.
I mean, let's be real. I don't need that to be a thing. Again, you just read Fool's Errand, which is one of my like, three favorite books ever, and it does not have that in its favor. Cough first 200 pages, but they're so good. So I'm okay with that. But I just from like a craft perspective, it was extremely impressive, like the way it was able to do it. Yeah.
Unrelated, well, related to what you said earlier about Jaime being your favorite. When Bookborn secretly read Game of Thrones, one of the only things she knew about it was that both Lyanna and I's favorite character in the series was Jaime Lannister. And
so she's confused.
So she was just really confused. And so, like, I guess when she finished the book, she was talking to Lyanna about it because she couldn't talk to me about it yet. And she was like, she was like trying to self-justify the incest. She's like, I guess the incest doesn't really bother me as much because they're like consenting adults, but like, it's just so gross. Like and then Lyanna's like, you're taking baby steps. You'll get there eventually.
I remember starting A Song of Swords and seeing the Jaime and being like, oh shit. The Jaime stuff in the Storm of Swords is so outrageously good.
Yeah, every single Jaime chapter I love. Like, there's no weak link.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember them all individually, but I'll probably agree with that. He's like one of my favorite fictional characters. So
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with the slow ones. I just like as an academic appreciation of a game. Like, here's a comparison. If you'd asked me before my reread to compare the quality of a Game of Thrones to the Age of Madness trilogy. I would have told you that Age of Madness is plotted better, but Game of Thrones is better character work. Specifically the novel Game of Thrones, not the series A Song of Ice and Fire.
Right.
And I think now I'm like, I think I probably slightly prefer the character work in the Age of Madness trilogy, but this is actually plotted, I think, even better than the Age of Madness trilogy.
I could agree with that.
Which is kind of the inverse of what I was expecting.
Yeah. That's interesting. Man, Age of Madness is really good. I gotta reread that. Also, have you read Dunk and Egg?
Yes, once in high school, because my high school library had Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Nice.
I was trying to, I'd forgotten that, and I was like,
that's one of those things that like shows our age difference, because like A Night of the Seven Kingdoms didn't even exist as a book until I was like 20. So like,
yeah. Yeah, they had the hardcover, and I remember I'd forgotten where I read it, and I was like, "Why don't I have this book?" And then I was like, "Oh yeah, it was a library book."
Dunk and Egg is so good. I'm actually there was a Kindle Daily Deal the other day of just the Hedge Knight graphic novel adaptation. So I was like, I just reread the Hedge Knight, but I've never read the graphic novel. So I was like, whatever, I'll just read it, and like it's really good. Like it's just a good story.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll get to Clash. We'll see what the scores are. If we extrapolate, and Clash is still a little bit better than Thrones, it should be like 9-4, maybe even 9-5 territory, realistically. And then Storm should be like...
See, the thing is, though, the Bran chapters are a drag. I know Kevin's not here anymore, but like the Bran chapters in Clash of Kings, like definitely, I think that's going to stop it from getting the 9.5 territory.
Okay.
But you do meet Wyman Manderley for the first time, so like let's go there.
And apparently Balon Swan does a bunch of cool stuff. So
he does. He factually does.
Okay.
Like, if I just told you, if I was just like, here's a thing a character does, how cool is it? And you didn't attach a name to it, you'd be like, this is one of the main characters of this series doing this shit. I'll be like, no, it's a guy that most people don't even remember.
Do you remember when you first said that to Jimmy, and you're used to people being like, who's Balon Swan? And Jimmy was just like, yeah, Balon Swan's awesome.
It was Scott, actually, but Jimmy also agrees. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was super pumped. I was like, yeah.
You're like, I found my people.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with Theon he's something.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we'll get to that. And then eventually a Storm of Swords, which obviously, like, a Storm of Swords is the one that has potential to start getting those being like, me being like, huh, is this like a 9.8? What's going on? Is this a 10?
Yeah.
Who knows? Probably not.
What is a 10 feel? Is it just like the 3 Hob books?
3 Hob books and Lord of Emperors. And Lord of Emperors took 2 reads to get the 10. So, and Fool's Errand, I didn't bump up to 10 until like months later, because I was
Fool's
still
Errand
upset.
being a 10 out of 10. I don't know about that. Don't look about my look up my score for that book.
Hey Derry, what's your favorite book ever? What's your favorite, or at least your favorite Realm of the Elderlings book? It's Fool's Errand. So yeah, it's just the 3 Hob books and Lord of Emperors, and only 2 of the Hob books got it like right away. It's a tough bar to get 10.
I kind of just want to binge the rest of Tawny Man this month, but I don't think I will.
Have you considered that you should do that, and it's a good idea?
I know, but there's a bunch of audiobooks that are leaving Audible Plus at the end of the month, and I'm like, I like to have the stuff read that I can read, so I'm probably going to read all those. So
that's fair. Although he has, even though it's the only Gog Gavroche Derry's read, that's okay. No one's perfect. One of those things that he's doing for audiobooks is Fionavar, which if he doesn't do, he won't do like forever.
I'm reading all of Fionavar this month, and then also the first 2 books in Brian Lee Durfee's trilogy, because the second one
that's
is
a good
leaving.
choice.
Yeah, the second one's leaving Audible Plus at the end of the month, and then 2 Cormac McCarthy books, and I'm gonna try to get to another series that I'm blanking on right now. But then if I get through all that, then I'm going to start Golden Fool.
I will have you know, Derry, that while he was sleeping after finishing Fool's Errand, I just DM'd him like, wait for you, but I'm the one who has like always had to go first and show you the way. So I'm mean. And yeah.
Yeah. I woke up to it and I was like, why?
Why would you do this? All right. Thanks for being here, chat. You were great. Thank you for being my guest here, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm always down to talk Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I imagine if I do a live show, which I think I will for every episode, I don't know if it will be you for all of them. I think I'll have Jimmy for Feast. No, you're here for Feast, but Jimmy will.
Listen, have me and Jimmy for Feast. We
That's
both
fair.
have been crying to the heavens for Feast to be recognized.
Yeah. I didn't have. By the way, Jimmy, if you're watching this later and you're like, why didn't I invite you? The actual reason is that I didn't know how much I would end up liking it more. And I think if I ended up being a hater,
version of you, Jimmy. That's
no,
all
it's not.
Yeah.
If I ended up hating on it a bit, I think that show would still be fun with Kyle. But I think it would just it wouldn't be as enjoyable if it was
Jimmy's
you know?
just raging.
Yeah, Jimmy's not.
What do
interested.
you mean you gave it a 7.8 out of 10? I'm gonna go to jiu-jitsu now and work this out.
Yeah, for the stuff Jimmy's not interested in whether I think stuff is good or not. He doesn't care about that for his alright fair. So we don't know how much I'm gonna like this show. I was like, all right, Jimmy, that's probably not the right guest. But yeah, that's because you don't talk about it as much, Derry.
I disagree. I think Derry talks about it all the time. Derry consistently.
Well, I said I used the word as much.
Well, she talks about Hobb the most.
Yeah.
And then I would say probably Dresden is the second most that I get from her. But like Discworld is because I mute all those. So like I don't see the Discworld talks. But then
that's true.
You know what? My library got a couple Discworld books, so I have them on hold. So I'll get them soon.
You know what? Maybe we'll have 3 people for some of the others. Maybe like one of them will be like you and Scott, and then one can be like you and Derry. One can be you and Jimmy, and one can be like you and Johanna. But I think if there's another person, I think Jimmy's getting.
Did you just call her Johanna?
Johanna? I don't know. I'm bad at names. Okay, I've never.
What is going on with you today?
I don't know. All right.
I'm so sorry. It's not that. Listen, I
sorry.
It's just today. It's just more than I've seen. I don't know. Like it's
even worse today than usual. I can't talk today. I don't know why.
It's okay. Discworld. It's Equal Rights and Weird Sisters. And it's like it's the new ones. I specifically my libraries have some of the older ones, but I don't like Stephen Briggs's narration, so I just never listen to those ones. But the new ones with like Indira Varma and stuff. So I thought that's what Alan calls you is Johanna and Yimmy.
Yasna.
Yeah. Okay, I gotta get going. So
all right, goodbye, Kyle. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being here, everyone. Chat.
Bye, everybody.
I'm gonna click end broadcast now. You were all great having you all here.